So, spring is apparently on the way, although it was a little violent last night. However, it seems as though there's a lot of news that has to do with global health. I don't know whether you noticed that, and I think this was on the BBC this morning, that somebody in Wales, a professor of the University of Swansea, has worked out how to genetically engineer the end of the Zika virus. They've recently done a survey of the survivors from the Ebola epidemic and found that they all have some sort of brain damage. And in the course that I teach with my colleagues in the School of Veterinary Medicine on global food security this week, we had people talking about the global poultry industry and the global swine industry. And in both cases, there are viruses that have to be watched for very carefully that could eliminate the species. So what's happened, it seems, in the recent past, in the last few decades, as our food economy has ceased to be a national food economy and become a global food economy, is that there's a global health, a really complex global health situation, which is going to require, excuse me, going to require a very different sort of organization in everything that has to do with health. And since it involves, I think it involves zoonosis as well, that is the possibility of the transfer of disease between different species, including us, it's going to involve a lot of rethinking about health issues globally.
What you just described alone will cause a lot of rethinking about health issues. But the standard response of the agricultural industry to date to those types of issues, of course, is simply to add more antibiotics on to the animal's food supply, which of course is having a deleterious effect on human health, because as humans ingest animals that are so loaded with antibiotics, it also... No, it doesn't deal with viruses.
Doesn't deal with
perhaps
viruses,
whatever they use to eliminate the virus, of course, would then be passed down to the consumers who eat the animal.
Well, I don't know, but apparently they've been, they don't talk about eliminating or exterminating. They talk about depopulating. They depopulated millions of poultry items, chickens, not very long ago, which I didn't know was happening. And in some cases, they've done the same thing for swine. Just that whenever something breaks out, the first priority is to eliminate anything that's infected,
you remember those,
so that it can't spread.
Scenes in Britain in 1999.
Well, the foot and mouth disease.
Horrifying.
And the problem for the swine is something very similar to foot and mouth disease, but it's a different disease that attacks pigs.
How
and
alarmed
not cows.
are the veterinary people about this?
Well, I mean, these were people in the School of Veterinary Medicine telling us about it. And of course, it's a big new. I mean, they're always telling me that veterinary medicine has not become a global profession, and all these countries need vets, and they don't have them. So from their point of view, it's a big professional opportunity. They didn't put it that way, but I think that's more or less the way they think of it, where a vet's needed. But certainly they made it very clear that it's a risk in a way now that it used not to be before, because everything is moving much more than it did before. And they had some figure that they showed us about the number of millions of swine that are moved from one place to another
Oh
every
yeah,
day,
yeah.
even in this
Well,
country.
I've noticed that myself. I mean, if you drive on our highways, especially late at night, you'll see. I mean, if you take a 300-mile drive from Pennsylvania west at night, you'll count a dozen trucks carrying livestock. I think they tend to move at night because the animals are
Mm.
quieter and there's less chance of them being caught in traffic. And you're right. I mean, because it's a
Hmm.
very mobile situation. Then the question is, of course, that food, once the animals are slaughtered and converted into food, that food goes everywhere in the world.
And then in addition to these health problems, another new thing that I just found was that they've now worked out how to make infertile males, human males,
This I didn't
fertile.
know about.
If a male who is infertile and is unable to have children, who wants to have children, can have his sperm grown in a lab, and it will be made fertile. Just been discovered, just been worked out. So, I mean, we're really getting to the point now where human beings are going to be in control of life. We're going to be in control of
Hmm.
what species we want in the rest of the world, and how to control our own lives. Biological evolution is coming to an end, and we're organizing evolution from now on ourselves. It's really unbelievable, or difficult to
Let me
believe
pose a
what's
question to
the
you.
way everything is changing.
We've often talked about how in the last 50 years there's been a revolution in technology insofar as the communications arena goes. Would it not be too much of a stretch to think that in the next 50 years there's going to be a similar revolution in terms of biology and biological capabilities?
Mhm. Es- Especially since it's been, we've heard several times from different sources in the recent past that the 21st century is going to be the century of not only of biology but of brain research. And I think the President Obama has set
Right.
aside $100 million for brain research. I may have got the figure wrong. I get uh,
It's a
have
big
difficulty
pile of money.
counting,
I do
getting
know
the right
that.
number of
Yes.
zeros in
It's a
figures like
big
this.
pile.
Uh, um, no, because the
Hmm.
brain is the
Hmm.
least well understood part of the human body, and we're now getting around to it, and the number of people
Hmm.
working on this sort of thing is really increasing, and a lot of interesting
Well,
things are coming out.
again, in that vein, biological research and exploration, it points out two things to me. When you look at the world as it is now between the developed countries and the undeveloped countries, the first thing that comes to mind, of course, is how far behind the people in the undeveloped countries will be as that technology begins to come out. And the second thing that came to me, being perhaps a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, um, is my goodness, what risks do those people have in those developing countries from the people who are now holding the levers of these new technologies and the ability to select the sex of a baby, the ability to program a human to a particular work type of function, the ability to have a human be particularly mathematically oriented or big and strong to perform farm labor or whatever it may be. And all of these things are in the offing. And
Hmm.
I think that there's going
Hmm.
to have to be a
Uh,
significant level of protections put in, or else people are going to be being taken advantage of.
well, even though we have the World Health Organization and other international
No,
organizations like that, they don't really have any authority. And the way the world is developing, there is no international
well, you're
authority
right. It took
except the
the
Pope.
leader of the World
Um,
Bank, who had a bee in his bonnet about Ebola, to begin to get people to pay attention to it. You're right.
Yeah. Um, in fact, what is the main determining factor in the way these things develop from now on is how many people from developing countries come to America, England, and a few other countries for professional education. And that's increasing, I think. And that's another thing that has featured in the news the past week. Just exactly what America and England, I've only seen it in relation to America and England, what they're doing in order to make it as easy as possible for people from other countries to come and study things like medicine.
It goes to the point that you often make insofar as the increased globalization, because those people will return back home, although that's not always the case. Many of them decide to stay here, and the gap can sometimes even widen more. But
well, it's true that they don't all go back home, but they usually retain an interest and have some influence back home, I think. I mean, they send remittances and
the influence of the overseas Chinese, for example, is a historical fact, right? Yes, exactly. Throughout all of Asia and many other places as well. So, and many of those people are people who've never been to China.
The only other thing that I have on my mind that I think we should at least mention before we finish our session today is that the Philippines has made some sort of complaint to request international negotiation about the South China Sea, and China has objected to it. So but it's interesting that something more has happened. So
there are two other
situation seems to be escalating.
Supposedly, a military intelligence source is saying that China has placed radar systems on the reclaimed islands. And then yesterday I saw a story saying that several Chinese fighter jets had landed on airstrips that had been built on the reclaimed islands. So a lot is going to happen there. I mean, and in fact, if you look on the Google Earth pictures of those islands, 80% of the reclaimed land is nothing but an airstrip. So their intentions are very clear.
Yeah, except that couldn't they do the same thing with an aircraft carrier?
So,
but I wonder whether it's cheaper to build an island than an aircraft carrier.
So, all right. Well, Professor, thank you for your time, and we'll talk in 2 weeks. We'll talk in 2 weeks. Thank you.
In 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Good. Bye.
Next week at this time, I'll be in London. So.
Yes.
Will you be here
right.
on what day is that? The 9th or something? The 10th?
It'll be the 1, 2, 3.
Good.
10th.
Good.
Yes, I think
when
so.
Is the spring break
I think
there?
that'll be okay.
Oh, it is. Okay.
That week.
What day are you going to come up to look at for your kitchen lesson?
I've forgotten the date. I have to look it up, and I haven't actually registered everything yet, or made sure I've got my place there. But that's one of the things. Well, it's the only thing actually besides the idea of us having a meal together that is a reason for me to come to the Princeton area. And I went there once a year or so ago, but not just to see their showroom, which is very, very good showroom. Which is where I selected my appliances, and I decided I wanted to go one of these
well, let me know as soon as you get that data. We'll be all ready for you. Okay. All right, Professor. It was a pleasure seeing you the other day, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. All right. Thank you. Thank you.